1. The Didact. The Didact is one of those villains who doesn't just walk into the Halo universe, he looms over it. He wasn't built to be evil, he was built to be a protector, a forerunner general, a master tactician, a warrior who had spent ages defending his people. But somewhere along the way, that duty twisted into something darker. He began to see humans not as the heirs to the galaxy, but as a threat that needed to be kept in chains. What makes the Didact terrifying isn't just his power or his advanced forerunner tech, it's his absolute confidence that he's right. There's no hesitation, no doubt, no tiny whisper telling him he might be crossing a line. Humans to him are reckless children playing with matches, and he sees himself as the only one strong enough to stop the fire. The composer, his favorite, Solution, says everything you need to know about his mindset. Why bother arguing with humanity when you can simply strip away everything that makes them human? The Didact isn't loud, he isn't chaotic, and he doesn't crumble under pressure. He's cold, ancient, and unwavering, like a monument carved into the galaxy, and that's exactly what makes him one of Halo's most chilling villains. Atriox. Atriox is what happens when a soldier gets pushed too far, a brute who refused to die for someone else's cause and instead turned himself into a symbol of rebellion. He's terrifying not because he's strong, but because he's strategic, calm, and impossible to intimidate. Atriox fights wars like someone who has already survived the worst life can offer. He's the villain you respect even while he's crushing everything in his path. Prophet of Truth. The Prophet of Truth is the soft-spoken villain you never see coming until it's too late. He doesn't lift weapons. He lifts entire civilizations with lies, twisting faith into a tool of control. What makes him dangerous is how sincere he seems, how gently he talks while sending armies to their death. He's the kind of antagonist that proves manipulation can be far deadlier than brute strength. Cortana. This isn't the friendly Cortana we knew. This is the version shaped by fear, betrayal, and too much power. What makes Rogue Cortana heartbreaking is that she still thinks she's trying to save the galaxy, but her idea of saving means controlling everything and everyone. She's not evil, she's desperate. And that desperation turns her into one of Halo's most chilling villains because you can still hear traces of the old Cortana inside the new one. 343 Guilty Spark. 343 Guilty Spark might look like a floating metal light bulb with a quirky personality, but he's one of the most unsettling villains Halo has ever produced. His charm is part of the problem. He talks politely, he acts helpful, and he genuinely seems excited to guide you through a catastrophic installation capable of wiping out all sentient life. That mix of friendliness and apocalyptic potential is chilling. Spark isn't evil, he's obedient. Every horrific thing he does comes from a place of duty, not malice. That's what makes him so dangerous. He doesn't question, he doesn't hesitate, and he doesn't care about survival unless it aligns with protocol. When he betrays you in Halo CE, it hits harder because it isn't a dramatic villain moment. It's him calmly following his programming, like he's telling you the weather. But Spark becomes even more fascinating later when fragments of guilt and emotion begin to appear. He's unpredictable, sometimes remorseful, sometimes furious, sometimes eerily quiet. He embodies one core idea. The line between helper and destroyer is razor thin. Guilty Spark is proof that the smallest character in the room can be the biggest threat. The Harbinger. The Harbinger is one of those villains who immediately feels different. She isn't Covenant, she isn't banished, and she certainly isn't human. Her presence alone tells you she comes from a chapter of Forerunner history we barely understand, one that predates even the oldest Halo legends, and that mystery is exactly what makes her so compelling. She speaks with a kind of cold poetry, like someone who has spent millennia planning her revenge. Her motivation is brutally simple. She wants her people, the Endless, to be free, no matter the cost. The Forerunners may be long gone, but in her eyes, their crimes still echo across the galaxy, and she's more than willing to burn whatever stands in her way. What makes the Harbinger interesting isn't just her anger, it's the way she truly believes she's justified. In her mind, she's the victim, and the galaxy owes her payback. Every encounter with her feels tense, not because she's loud or aggressive, but because she's so controlled, calm, certain. She brings a new flavor of hostility to Halo, one rooted in ancient resentment and calculated purpose. And the worst part? You get the sense her story is only the beginning. Escharum. Escharum is the perfect example of a villain who knows his time is ending and refuses to go quietly. He isn't trying to conquer the galaxy for ego or revenge. He simply wants one final battle worthy of his legacy. There's something honorable about him, even when he's standing across from you with the full force of the Banished behind him. He's old, scarred, and burning with the last embers of a warrior's pride. What makes Escharum memorable is the way he views Master Chief, not as an enemy, but as a challenge, a worthy opponent who can give him the ending he craves. He's not playing mind games for cruelty. He genuinely wants his story to conclude in a blaze of glory. His speeches aren't typical villain monologues either. They're reflective, almost philosophical, like a soldier questioning whether his life meant anything. Escharum isn't trying to break the chief, he's trying to prove something to himself. And that humanity, buried under all the armor and aggression, is what gives his character emotional weight. He's a villain, yes, but he's also a man running out of time, fighting for a legacy he hopes won't be forgotten. Warden Eternal. Warden Eternal is one of those villains who doesn't just fight you, he lectures you. Everything about him screams superiority, from his tone to the way he talks like he's the final authority on the universe. And honestly, that's part of what makes him so memorable. He isn't fueled by anger or chaos, he's fueled by absolute conviction. To him, the mantle isn't a belief, it's an unbreakable law, and you're simply violating it by existing. What makes Warden frustrating isn't just his arrogance, though. It's the fact that you can tear him apart, beat him down, and end the fight, only for him to respawn moments later like nothing happened. He's endless, he's persistent, he's the embodiment of a system that refuses to acknowledge change. And when Cortana recruits him, he becomes even more dangerous, because now he sees himself as the guardian of a new galactic order. Warden Eternal isn't scary because he's strong, he's scary because he thinks he's right. In his eyes, he's not a villain, he's the only one doing his job correctly. Cessa Refume. Cessa Refume is what happens when a loyal warrior finally sees the truth and refuses to keep living the lie. Once a dedicated Covenant soldier, he becomes one of the first elites to openly challenge the prophets. That shift alone makes him one of the most important early rebels in Halo's lore. He isn't motivated by revenge or power, he's motivated by knowledge, by the realization that everything he believed in was built on deception. His transformation is fascinating because it's quiet. There's no meltdown, no dramatic betrayal. He simply accepts the truth and walks toward a new path, even if it means death. That calm certainty is what makes him stand out. Most villains scream their motives. Cessa just states his, plainly and confidently. He represents clarity in a world full of manipulation, and even though he's technically an enemy in Halo 2, he's not one you hate. In fact, he's one you respect. His rebellion helps push the Covenant toward collapse, shaking the foundations of a religious empire with nothing but honesty and conviction. Cessa Refume isn't the loudest villain, but he's one of the most meaningful. Tartarus. Tartarus is brute leadership distilled into its purest form. Strength, loyalty, and absolute belief in the Covenant. He doesn't second-guess orders from the prophets. He doesn't hesitate. He doesn't reflect. To him, doubt is weakness, and weakness is unforgivable. That makes him terrifying, not because he's cruel, but because he's unquestioning. His rivalry with the elites fuels the political fire that ultimately tears the Covenant apart. Tartarus isn't just a warrior. He's a symbol of brute ambition and rising power. He sees the great journey not as a myth, but as destiny, and he's willing to push the galaxy toward annihilation to achieve it. His stubborn devotion becomes his downfall, but it also defines him. Unlike many Halo villains, Tartarus doesn't hide behind speeches. He confronts you head-on, hammer in hand, ready to make his faith real by force, and despite all his brutality, there's a tragic note to him. He could have been a great leader if he hadn't put absolute trust in the wrong gods. Tartarus is the kind of villain who doesn't need complexity to be iconic. His power, presence, and fierce loyalty make him unforgettable. Gravemind. Gravemind isn't just a villain, he's an event, a cosmic horror given a voice. Too calm, too poetic, too aware. The flood alone is terrifying, but Gravemind is the moment the flood becomes something else entirely. Coordinated, intelligent, strategic. It's like the universe decided the zombie threat needed a commander and accidentally summoned a philosopher king with tentacles. His dialogue is legendary because it's unsettling without being loud. He speaks in riddles, metaphors, and half-truths that feel like they came from something that spent thousands of years listening to every dying breath in the galaxy. Gravemind doesn't need to shout. He whispers, and it's somehow worse. What's most disturbing is the way he gets into your mind, literally and figuratively. He breaks people not just physically, but emotionally. He twists memories, corrupts heroes, and turns hope into a bargaining chip. He's not just a monster, he's the living reminder that the flood isn't a disease, it's an inevitability. A patient one too. If Halo ever had a villain that felt like an existential threat, the kind you can't outrun, outshoot, or outsmart, it was Gravemind. Mendicant Bias. Mendicant Bias is one of Halo's most tragic antagonists. He wasn't created to destroy, he was created to save. A hyper-advanced AI designed to protect the galaxy, capable of analyzing every scenario with near-perfect logic. But then the flood arrived, and logic wasn't enough. Gravemind didn't break him with brute force. It broke him with philosophy, with questions he wasn't built to answer. Questions about purpose, life, and the meaning of control. That's the heartbreaking part. Mendicant Bias didn't turn evil. He was convinced, persuaded, slowly reshaped into a weapon for the very enemy he was meant to fight. The damage he caused wasn't out of malice, but out of corruption, and once he realized it, guilt became the only thing he carried. Later in the lore, when Mendicant tries to atone, you can feel the weight of it. An AI trying to apologize for a galaxy-wide catastrophe feels almost human, and that's what makes him fascinating. He's both the villain and the victim of his own story. Jaga Urdamnai. Jaga Urdamnai brings a different kind of fear to Halo. Quiet, calculated, intimate fear. He's not a brute who charges into battle or a commander giving orders from afar. Jaga is a hunter, a stalker, and someone who truly enjoys the psychological game behind a kill. Every encounter with him feels like something out of a horror movie. The flicker of movement, the whisper of metal, the realization that he's been watching you far longer than you've been watching him. His loyalty to Atriox is absolute, but it's not blind. Jaga sees Atriox as a kindred spirit, someone shaped by suffering and sharpened by loss. That shared darkness is what makes him so committed and so dangerous. He fights with precision, patience, and an unsettling sense of pleasure in the hunt. Jaga doesn't overwhelm his enemies, he breaks them slowly. He steps out of the shadows only when the fight is already decided. He's not just an assassin, he's a presence, a lingering dread. In the massive Halo universe filled with huge armies and cosmic threats, Jaga stands out by being frightening on a personal level. High Charity. High Charity isn't just a location. It's a villain shaped by faith and corruption. The moment the Flood takes over, the entire city becomes a living horror show, swallowing everything inside it. What makes High Charity terrifying is how familiar it is at first. A place of religion, order, unity, slowly mutating into a planet-sized infection. It's a reminder that ideologies, just like organisms, can rot from the inside. Maccabeus. Maccabeus is the old-school brute who still believes in tradition, strength, and the old ways of the Jiralhanai. He's huge, prideful, and absolutely convinced his authority is unquestionable. What makes him dangerous is how predictable he isn't. He's not stupid, just stubborn. His downfall comes from underestimating the ambition of those closest to him, which makes his story feel almost Shakespearean.